All right. Hi. I'm going to give you guys a sort of a reflection on getting this yesterday. What it was like being in. I'd been in tattoo parlors before, but just because, yeah, there was a trip where someone got a piercing, and a lot of piercing and tattoo places in the States. Anyways, plus just sort of walking in. But I hadn't actually had any work ever done there, nor have I live watched a tattoo. So, this was interesting. Plus, it's Amsterdam and, Netherlands and the red light district. And it was just like, yeah, for a lot of conservative Americans, if you're going to go do something, that's already what? Not to mention that the ceiling was barely over my head. I felt like I still had the deck. It's really small. Anyway, so it's in the red light district. It's right alongside a canal. There's a cafe over top. I think they own it. I'm not sure also if it's a coffee shop or not, but that's Amsterdam for you. And then, so when I got in there, right at their opening hours, they had the previous picture that I'd sent them over email, and Chantal had done a line drawing of it. And so the line drawing was basically just this, but just the outlines. I mean, that's what a line drawing is. So she had worked on it all weekend and was really interested in it, and yeah, it was understandably the hand is a really hard part, and it looks a little more cartoony than it probably would have in the actual picture, but again, this isn't photorealism here. I was sitting down while they were preparing the station because they knew it was going to be a couple hours, so they wanted to make sure that I had the designated one kind of over in the corner. And yeah, and Chantal came out and said that, hey, we've got a different, one of our artists says, ooh, I want to do that one. Because she didn't have any coloration on it. I just know that I didn't want to sit there for a solid blue, constantly just because from what I've heard from other people, solid colors are just so long. And I confirmed that. So John, he got, we sat down, and obviously I was nervous at first because it was a new person, but I was I kind of stuffed the nervousness a little bit. But in terms of the pain at first, I didn't know what to expect. But I do know that my pain tolerance is way higher than a lot of other people. I was well, I broke my collarbone, so I figured what's the worst a tattoo can be? He goes, bro, I've been skateboarding for 10 years, and I've broken a number of bones, and nothing feels like a tattoo. I'm that's true. Bones don't really have nerves. He goes, exactly. But in that weird Dutch way. Yes, precies. English then Dutch. Yeah, exactly. Dutch then English. It's weird. And so he did the outline, and there were certain areas, right back here. I'm trying not to touch it, and this is a really bad idea, but on the backside where the face mask part is, that was a little bit, you get the little, in between your nails pinchiness. But by that point, because he kind of went down to up, okay, it's sort of like when you're painting a floor or something, you go in one direction, I guess. When you're also squeegeeing a window, you go from the top down, I guess. I don't know. There's an art to this that I don't actually know. It was very soothing. The music was a little loud, but that was fine because it was helpingly distracting. That's not a word. Hopefully, I don't know the word. It was helping to distract. Like I said, the music was a little loud, but if you guys watched yesterday's video, yeah, you'll see what I mean by the really loud music. But it was super bright in there, and it reminds me of one of the YouTube doctors went over and talked about the TV shows and doctor stuff, and they're why is there always mood lighting inside an operating thing? When you're doing stuff, you want it to be as overly lit as possible. You don't want any weird shadows hiding anything. And I'm like, that's understandable. You want to be able to see everything you're doing from every angle. And this was very bright in comparison to their, waiting room, which can have mood lighting. They did have a lot of specimens in the thing. I'm not sure if they were real formaldehyde snakes or anything, but, theme. And so I sat with like my arm little thing rest here and put myself on the shelf, and I just sort of like let it rest there with my arm down. I did need to like do this every once in a while and swing my arm around, and because like the arm was in a frozen position to let him do his work. But like after about halfway through the outline, we had just started like talking more, and I was being like that weird autistic shy silent, but it was sort of like the dude, he kept trying to break the silence and I kept giving short little answers. And then I just like loosened up after a little bit, I think because the amount of time it was just, and there were moments where I just sort of like, I could like feel what he was doing, and he was really trying to get a good part, or when he was doing some of the black shading and he needed to go over a certain part over and over, and I was like, okay, this is getting a little bit excessive. And so I just like looked up at the ceiling, and I kind of just went into like a meditative thing, and it was like weird white noise when he'd have to get up here with the machine, and it was like buzzing right in my ear. It wasn't loud by any means, but I'll say this, we had a lot to talk about. I'm not going to discuss all the topics, but we talked about the C word, and we talked about the politics in America and some of the politics of Dutch and Amsterdam culture versus everybody else in the Netherlands, which was kind of funny, that Amsterdam is within its own little bubble. Like you could go to Den Haag or other larger cities and they're not quite the same. Amsterdam just does what it wants, and I even made the joke, and it's like, we had like one day of like super lockdown, but like after 3 days, people were out walking around going to the store. He goes, it's just Amsterdam, nobody gives a shit, they just do what they want. I'm like, yeah, because how much did the Dutch really ban anything? he had to pull the thing back and just laugh so hard. He goes, I've never heard Americans say anything like that. But I didn't, and he says, I didn't realize your country was so strict. Everyone seems so happy. I'm like, a lot of people are in denial. But we talked about a lot of things, and he described the philosophy behind what he calls old school tattoo, which is the shading and stuff, rather than just pure coloring it in. And that was really interesting. I always like learning new information. But yes, it did get annoying after a while sitting in one position. My butt started going numb. So in between the lines and then the black shading and then the color shading, we took little breaks. He went out for a smoke, and I just sort of stood up and like, moved. I didn't like walk around. There was like 4 other ladies that came in to the side of me that had small little tattoos. They were on vacation or something from France, and so they were getting like small little tattoos. It was nice. And Chantal did those, and I got to hear a little bit of French English. Weirdly personal, which this dude is taking needles and puncturing them into your skin, and anybody who's had a tattoo that's of a decent size or decent complexity, like I know Willie would completely understand this one because of what was on his forearm. Anything that took that long, like if all you're doing is like what one of the girls had, is she got a little like cross done right here, which is that was that. Like it's not really an intimate, I mean it is an intimate procedure, but it's not, being around someone within less than half a meter of them for like 3 hours straight. Get what I mean by the whole intimate thing? Yeah. And it was weirdly refreshing. And honestly, I gotta say that the issue I had going back to the team, aside from the Moncapia thing on transit, but just going back and I was out of practice for being social, and I still am a little bit, but I kind of had a business proposition that forced me to be social during a I don't want to say, there's going to be a lot of guys that watch this and think I'm talking weird, but anybody who's had a decent tattoo like this is going to understand what I mean. And most people are logically, it's intensely intimate, you know. You do not want to have bad breath for any of this. And so yeah, that's that. The shop in of itself had a lot of the tattooy artwork around it. You know, I always had something to look at if I needed to kind of glance away and turn my ear away from the machine. I'm not against needles. Sometimes I'll watch the flu shot just because I'm curious. It's not that. He had his hand a lot in the way because he was holding it this way on my arm, and so I couldn't see. But when he came into this part, he was angled down a little bit more, so I could actually watch the little gun do its thing on the line. And it was actually quite interesting to watch. I wish I could have gotten the camera to like look at it, but there's just no way to do it. Especially with all the pandemic rules and stuff. Anyways, so yeah, it felt weird because I didn't have anybody to be there with me, but with the rules that they had in place that were hanging on a sign, there was only one person allowed back there per tattooey thing. It's not a big area. I think this room is about a little, yeah, it was very small in there, but it's interesting. It was way more relaxing and soothing than I expected it to be. Mainly probably because it was a bit more personal than it just was, you know, a wham bam thank you man tattoo. Nothing really hurt, but it is a really low pain area. Obviously there are higher pain areas, you know, and we'll think about this maybe. I'm not against doing this again, but I'm not like, oh, I gotta do it like right now. One, it's expensive. This cost hundreds of euros to do. Most people are guessing the price right. Understandably, one of my friends says, well, that's a little expensive, but everything's here expensive in, you know, Western Europe. And I'm like, yeah, I could probably go get a tattoo like this. And, you know, I gotta give it up to John for his artistic endeavors and, you know, kind of freehanding the color and all that stuff. I am not an artist. I make YouTube videos, but I think of them way more technical than I do artistic. That's the more technical part is like the lighting and the sound and all that jazz. I've never really had to worry about sound because my voice projects. Not sure how this one's working because there's a like, yeah. There's a shelf right there. Anyways, but yeah. So that's my experience at it. It was very relaxing and kind of that bit of contact that I needed, that I didn't know that I needed. I just figured that without football and with all that stuff, I'd have time to get this and then to heal it before I, you know, start running my shoulders into things again. So that's why I was like, let's do it now as soon as possible, not wait till like later in the thing, so that 6 weeks comes and heals and, you know, it's September and we would have normally started 2021 practices at that time anyways. And yes, this had been planned in between the seasons, but yeah. Funny, but I need to find a better picture for this. Spoiler! Which would have been right about now. We would have had the Tulip Bowl sometime at the beginning of this month, and we would be on break until September. And I would have probably gotten a tattoo. This was not an on-the-spur moment, and all that jazz. And I would have to say that if you're going to get a tattoo like this, yeah, it's not... first of all, on the spur of the moment is not something like this. You know, a little cross, a little name, I love you honey, with like your girlfriend.
your girlfriend's name on your arm and that stuff, you know, carve that into a tree. The tree will feel a little bit of pain, but you know, that way you don't have to keep going over the hearts as the girl breaks up with you because you're not rich. But anyways, so yeah, that's that. I feel okay talking to the guys on the team again, but by and large, they do mean a lot more to me as friends, so I don't really want to screw it up. If I said something rude to John yesterday, it was relatively okay. He's had drunk Brits that have like probably dissed on him, and he's like, whatever, you know, and he didn't, yeah. So that's that. I just thought I'd ramble, give like my experience. If you have any questions about it that I didn't cover here, please ask below. I know I cannot cover everything because I know a lot of stuff, but I don't know what to bring up. Kind of a analysis paralysis sort of thing. Catch you guys later.